Honestly, if you're not using the Lightroom shortcuts that I'm going to show you in this video, you're going to waste a crazy amount of time on the Lightroom. For years now, I have been editing photographs almost every day using Lightroom software. So I developed techniques and tricks that allow me to save a lot of time. And so today, in this video, I'm going to reveal my tips to you, my favorite shortcuts that will really help you move much faster in the software and, most importantly, save you a ton of time. And the best part about all this is that at the end of this video, I'm going to share a hack that will let you not even have to remember all these shortcuts. And let's jump right into the first shortcut that will allow you to automatically apply the settings that Lightroom deems useful and interesting for your photography. This will correspond to the auto button, which is right here. But instead of clicking on that button, we're going to use the shortcut Ctrl+U, which will allow us to do exactly the same thing. And you can see that the settings have been adjusted to fit our photograph. That was the first shortcut, and the second one will involve using the shortcut Ctrl+U. This one will allow you to adjust the automatic white balance, adapting it automatically to your photograph, depending on what Lightroom considers good for your photo. Another super interesting shortcut that will allow you to check if you have any blocked areas or blown out highlights in your photograph. This will involve using the J shortcut on your keyboard, which will alert you when you start to have overexposed areas or, conversely, completely blocked areas. This will allow you to display this kind of preview, which really helps save a lot of time. So you can do exactly the same thing by clicking on the little triangles that are right here. But I find that it's much quicker to use the J shortcut to activate and deactivate them automatically at the same time. Another shortcut that is also super interesting is to use the Alt key on your keyboard on the sliders that we have in the right column. This will allow you to activate a lot of features. The first thing is that if you go to the basic adjustment panel and press the Alt button, you'll see that it will allow you to activate it like this. A preview that allows you to see the blown out areas when you activate the highlights, as well as the blocked shadows. If we activate the blacks and shadows sliders, but where it will be particularly interesting is if you go to the tab called Detail, which will allow you in particular to play on the sharpness. If you use it on the gain, you will have a preview of what will be impacted on your photography. You can also play around with the radius with the Alt key held down to really see the effect. This radius slider we'll have here. You also have the option to do this with the detail. Here you will have an amplification of the detail and a much faster preview of the detail that will be added to your photograph. But where it will be particularly interesting is on the masking tool, which will allow you to actually choose and see directly which areas will be impacted. So there, if you have a masking which is towards the bottom, we will have the sharpness which will be displayed on the whole photograph. These are the white parts that are located here. But if you increase the masking, you'll see that there will be black areas, meaning sharpness will only be applied to the white parts. So this is really a very handy shortcut, which can be used on many settings in the right column. So I recommend trying this out on different settings. Another setting that I also love to use allows me to easily sort my photographs, and most importantly, to delete them very quickly. This will involve using the flagging system in Lightroom, which will allow you to organize and sort your photographs. For example, let's say this photograph doesn't interest me. I just need to press the keyboard shortcut X to mark it as rejected, and I can also go look for other photographs. For example, this one doesn't interest me, and I might want to keep, for example, just this one. We'll press the letter P on the keyboard, and that will allow me to keep the photograph. And that's where it's going to be interesting, is that if I come to mark several photographs as rejected, I can now use the shortcut Ctrl+Back or Ctrl-Delete will allow you to automatically delete the photographs that have been marked as rejected. So with the shortcut X, you have the option to either remove them just from the Lightroom software, or you can completely delete the photographs from your disk. So just a heads up, this will send them to your computer's trash, but this allows you to do it very easily. Another shortcut that I really like to use is to activate the cropping feature on my photographs. So for cropping, we can go through this tab right here. It's also the shortcut on your keyboard. But what's interesting about this cropping is that you see we have a rule of thirds that appears. Well, this rule of thirds can be changed to have a different grid. And to do that, you just need to press the O button several times, which will allow you to activate different composition grids. Now I'm going to press the O button again, and you can see that it will activate for me gradually different composition rules, which can be interesting if you enjoy recomposing your photographs. With different composition grids, this will also relate to the cropping tool in Lightroom. Let's imagine I want to crop this photograph and switch it from landscape mode to portrait mode, especially to remove all the empty space in front that doesn't really serve much purpose. So one solution would be to pull this slider here to rework my composition. The problem is that I'm going to completely lose my original aspect ratio. For example, here I have a photograph that was taken in a 3.5 format, and I want to keep that 3.5 format but in a vertical orientation. To do this in Lightroom, it's very simple. Just press the keyboard shortcut X when you have the crop tool activated, which will automatically switch you to vertical mode while keeping your original aspect ratio on the photograph. Now, all I have to do is recompose my photograph, for example, like this one, to position my main subject according to the rule of thirds. Other shortcuts that you should also know by heart. It's about being able to activate the different settings that are here. So, we've already looked at the crop tool tool, you also have the healing tool, which is the shortcut key. But what I'm really interested in here is the masking tool. So the masking tool, when we dive into it, gives us the option to activate different masks. Well, instead of doing it manually and searching for the different settings that are here, I'm going to use the shortcuts that are indicated right here. So we have the shortcut M, which will allow you to add a graduated filter to your photograph. You also have the shortcut Shift M, which will allow you to add a radial filter. So it really helps save a lot of time. And finally, you have the shortcut K, which will allow you to add a brush to your photograph. So it really allows you to be extremely quick when you're adding different masks to your photo. By the way, we're still on the masking tools, especially with shortcuts that will relate to the brush. So I'm going to press the K key to add a new brush to my image. And let's imagine here, I want to come and cut out the background. I could use a brush and draw like this, but you can see that it's not necessarily very precise because we're definitely going to go off topic. So there is a setting on the brush that is very handy, which allows you to correct that. It's to use what's called automatic masking, which is right here. Well, you will see now that if I come to draw, Lightroom will automatically detect the outline of the subject. So even if I go over the subject a bit, the subject will not be selected. So that's already something interesting. But sometimes we want to turn off that automatic masking and reactivate it from time to time. So rather than doing it manually here, what I'm going to do is leave the option disabled. And with my retouching brush, I'm going to press the Control key. I'm going to draw, which will automatically do the same thing. Except that now, the only difference is that if I release my Control key, I will disable the automatic masking. And so, you see that we're going to get a normal brush back. Thanks to this keyboard shortcut with the Control key held down, I can automatically switch from one to the other. Another tip with this retouching brush is that we can now switch to negative mode. So, in negative mode, we could use the option called Subtract here. We're not going to do that because it takes a lot of time. Actually, what we're going to do is, with our brush activated, I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and you can see that the cursor has switched to negative mode. So this allows me to go in and erase the parts that I'm not interested in. And in the same way, if I go over the lines, let's say, for example, I make this little mistake and go beyond, holding down Alt, you'll see that it activates the negative eraser, but it also activates automatic masking for me. So this will allow me to come and erase very easily and very quickly the parts on which I have overflowed and to have here an automatic edge detection on my brush. Another extremely important shortcut you need to learn to use is the ability to hide tool previews. When we go, for example, to activate the delete tool here, let's imagine that I want to delete this part. You see that, by default, when I release this part here, I have a preview that appears, and also an eraser that appears. And there, it can be problematic, because if I zoom in, you will see that there is a very small area left. And if I wanted to go and delete that, then I'm in trouble because suddenly I can't draw over that area. Well, we can easily fix that by pressing the H key on the keyboard, which will temporarily make the preview of your tool disappear. And suddenly, you see that there, I can come and draw over the task which was just below my first selection tool. And suddenly, that will allow me to easily delete what was underneath. Really, a very handy shortcut to use. If you press H, you will be able to turn the preview on and off, and therefore be able to work below a selection if you still have things to delete below the first selection. Another shortcut that will be super useful for you, especially if you're like me and used to working with a stylus on a graphics tablet. So, the graphics tablet allows you to draw on a surface, enabling you to make very precise selections. And really, it's an incredibly handy tool. Except that when you are on the iTron, you can have a problem. It's that when we want to outline certain parts, depending on the orientation of our hand, especially if we're left-handed or right-handed, depending on the area you want to select, you may have some difficulties. For example, here, if I wanted to come and make a very precise selection outside the beak, it can be a little complicated, depending on the orientation of the photo, to really make a precise outline. To fix that, we're going to use another keyboard shortcut, Ctrl+W. To make our lives easier, what we're going to do is we're going to orient our photography differently. And to do that, I'm going to use the shortcut Shift+W, which will allow me to rotate it counterclockwise, my photograph. We can do it multiple times. For example, if I press again on double-click W, for example, if I double-click again, W, Shift, I'm going to rotate my photograph again, and so on. And we're also going to have the same thing, but in the clockwise direction. By using the shortcut Shift+Q, this will allow me to orient it to the right this time. And here, the advantage is that I can really go ahead. For example, refine my selection with a different orientation. And so, I can have a much more natural movement with my stylus, adapting to the situation based on my photograph. So it's really a very handy shortcut to use for me. I always use it to make very precise selections with my tablet. Let's move on to the next shortcut, which this time will focus on dust removal, and it will ensure that you never miss a single speck of dust on your photograph. Here, you can see that I have quite a bit of dust on the sensor, and to go ahead and remove the dust from our photographs, we're obviously going to use the option called Remove, which will allow you to easily get rid of certain dust particles on your sensor with ease. So generally, when we're using this tool, we're going to use the option called Show Defects, who will allow you, thanks to this preview, to easily see the different dusts. There, for example, I can see a little bit of all the circles that are in my photograph which correspond to dust. The problem is that we can miss some. For example, if I want to go delete some dust, generally, what we're going to do is we're going to move manually like this in the image. For example, I will be able to go and remove the dust like this. So that's really the classic way we do it. The problem is that it already takes a lot of time, and sometimes, if we don't come across the right area, we can miss some dust. What I suggest you do is to approach it differently. Let's use keyboard shortcuts that will allow you to completely sweep through your photograph, ensuring you never miss a single flaw. And to do that, it's very simple. You just need to switch to zoom mode, so you can choose the zoom level that works for you. I'm going to set the zoom to 100%. Look here, I have a preview that appears as a rectangle, which corresponds to the zoom level I'm currently at on the main image in the center. Now watch, as I use the home key shortcut on the keyboard. You will see that the preview frame will position itself at the top left of my photograph. You'll see that I can sweep across my photograph like this, and then when I press the button, bottom page, you will see that it will automatically switch to the right of the photograph. And so like that, I can really scan my entire photograph, and I know that I haven't missed any areas of my image. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to press the home button once again to return to the beginning of my photograph. So now, all I have to do is go and remove the little dust spots that are showing up on my photograph. You see that this will allow me to be much faster, and above all, to no longer miss a single speck of dust on my image, because I know that Lightroom will really sweep through the entire Lightroom. So I'm going to keep going until the end. For example, there's a little speck of dust right here. So really, a super interesting shortcut, especially if you really pay close attention to the quality of your photographs. For me, it's something I do, for example, on my photo prints, to make sure I don't miss a single flaw. Another shortcut that I also use extremely often is switching and opening my photograph in Photoshop. We can do this by right-clicking on our photograph and selecting the option called Edit in Adobe Photoshop. I don't use it. I think it's a bit too long. What I'm going to do is use the shortcut. Ctrl+E will allow me to automatically switch my photograph into Photoshop. It's going to be instant, and I'll find my photograph directly in Photoshop. There you go. My photograph has been automatically imported into Photoshop thanks to this shortcut. For example, I could use a sharpening action that is included in my training to enhance the image. Increase the sharpness of your photos. I'm going to start this action. You'll see that this will allow you to gain a ton of sharpness on the photograph. There you go. The action has been added. You can see that I have gained a lot of sharpness in my photograph. Now I can do a Ctrl+S to save my photograph, which will automatically switch the image back to Lightroom. With these keyboard shortcuts, I can switch very easily and very quickly from one software to another. I don't have to bother doing it manually anymore by going to right-click and edit in Photoshop. So, I promised you a little bonus with a handy hack that will help you easily remember these different shortcuts. To do this, you just need to press the Control shortcut, which will automatically open this window for you. So, inside this window, you'll find all the shortcuts for the Develop module, but you can do exactly the same thing with the Library module. If I go back here to the Library module and press the Control shortcut plus the less than or greater than sign, again, I will activate the shortcuts for the Library module only this time. So this allows you, if you've forgotten some shortcuts, to find them extremely quickly. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, especially since you discovered new features of your software. Feel free to let me know in the comments which shortcut you preferred. Especially, if you know of any other shortcuts like these, feel free to share them with the community. And if you would like to progress much more quickly with Lightroom, especially learning the basics of the Lightroom and development, feel free to sign up for my free training that just popped up on the screen. There are over 3 hours of courses available for free, and to sign up, you just need to click on a little thumbnail to my left to be automatically redirected to the registration page for this training. And if you'd like to discover even more tips on Lightroom, you also have the option to check out the next video that's right to my left. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for sticking with it until the end, and I'll see you soon for a new episode.